Hi everyone, welcome to Agent Stacks. In this LangChain series, we are learning every core concepts from scratch in the correct order. Today we are covering one of the most exciting topics in LangChain, which are tools. By the end of the video, you will understand what tools are, why are they needed, how they work behind the scenes, how to create your own custom tools, what are toolkits, what are tool bindings, what are tool callings, and tool execution work together. So without wasting any time, let's get started. So before we begin, if you are new here, make sure you check out the AI engineering playlist where I have covered models, prompts, chains, memory, starting from very scratch to moving on to advancements. If you are enjoying this series and I want you to master AI engineering, I would be very happy if you subscribe the channel, and let's jump into today's topic. So, what are tools in LangChain? So, a tool is simply a Python function or the external capability that an LLM can use whenever it needs additional information or wants to perform an action. So, unlike an LLM which only generates text, tools allow the model to interact with the outside world by calling APIs, querying databases. So, these all things which we can perform is can be done with the help of an LangChain, which is pools. So tools think of a tool like it's a human. So human don't remember everything. If we need today's weather, we can check the weather app. If we need direction, we can open a Google map. If we need a calculation, if I want to do calculation, I can use a calculator. So similarly, an LLM uses tool whenever it needs information beyond its own knowledge or it needs to perform an action. So in simple words, tools extend the capabilities of an LLM. And without tools, an LLM can only generate text. With tools, it can interact with the real world. So tools help in lot of cases like performing calculations, search the web, query databases, read documents, execute Python code, call APIs. So we have a lot of use cases. So this is something which I want to start explaining that how we can use tools in LangChain. Now coming on to the next part, which is how do tools work. So I will explain on a very high level. So tools, it processes a simple five-step formula where it starts where the user asks the question. For example, here the user is asking what's the weather in Mumbai. So the LLM analyzes the entire request and it realizes that I don't know the current weather, but I have a weather tool. So LLM decides to call that tool. And then the tool fetches the live weather data from an external API, and then the tool sends the result back to LLM. And finally, the LLM converts the raw data into a natural language response to the user. So LLM isn't directly accessing the data of the weather. It's intelligently deciding when to use the tool. So examples of some tool are like, for example, calculator, web search, weather API, SQL database, Python REPL, and there are a lot of tools that we can use. And then we have to understand like where at what state of condition we need to use the tool. So this is the entire workflow I have created where starting from user query to final response has been entirely explained. So now comes some example of tools. We have Weather API, Google Search, Calculator, SQL databases, PDF reader, email sender. So there are a lot of tools which is openly available. You can use any one of this. Now comes the next important part, which is a built-in tools. So basically, even if you know about that, we can create tools using external application, third-party APIs. But LangChain already provides several ready-to-use tools. So these tools are pre-built and save us from writing everything ourselves. So some examples include search tools, Python execution tool, file system tool, SQL database tools, Wikipedia tools, web search request tools. So instead of implementing these functionalities from scratch, we can simply import and use them. So built-in tools help us to build AI application much faster. So now coming on to next part, which is a custom tool. So custom tools are user-defined function that extend the capability of LLM to perform tasks specific to your application or business. So basically, just example like, but what if like think like your company has its own API or your application needs a unique capability. So that's why custom tool comes in. So suppose your company has an external internal HR system, you can create a tool called Get Employee Salary, or maybe a hospital has an internal patient database. So you can create a database mentioning as a Get Patient History. So these are not available in LangChain, but we can build by ourselves. So any Python function can become a LangChain tool, and this is what makes a LangChain extremely flexible. So here are some of the common use cases like banking, healthcare, travel, e-commerce, HR, enterprise. So this is where something a custom tool comes into picture, where you don't have to be dependent on some documentation or something which is inbuilt or different API. If you have your own system, internal system ready, you can use that. You can create your own custom tools from scratch. So now let's understand what are the ways that we can create a tool. So here we can see LangChain offers multiple approaches for creating tools depending on the complexity of our application. So first we can see as a tool decorator. So tool decorator is basically the easiest and most commonly used method. So basically what here we do, we create a decorate function. We create a decorate in a Python function where we can use minimal code and we can do some uh, function. You can create a function and you can create some operations. So this approach is perfectly and simply a utility function based kind of, which you can create a function and you can use LangChain to execute the tool. Next come a structured tool, where sometimes our tool requires multiple parameters with validation. So for example, booking a flight requires origin, destination, date, passenger count. So structured tools help define structured inputs. So it makes the tool much more reliable. So here you can see like I have mentioned like allows you to define tools with multiple parameters, type validations, and detailed description, and it's best suited for production grade applications. Now comes the third, which is a base tool. So if we need a complete control over how our tool behaves, so we can inherit from a base tool. So this is useful when building an enterprise level application like custom logic, authentication, blogging, error handling. So although it requires more code, but it provides a maximum flexibility. Next comes a tool from function. So where LangChain allows you to convert an existing Python function into a tool using a structured tool, where this is useful when you already have a utility function and you don't want to rewrite it. So it's a very quick way to integrate the existing code into your AI application. Now comes what are toolkits. So a toolkit is a collection of related tools grouped together to perform a specific category of task. So instead of you registering multiple tools individually, LangChain provides a toolkit that bundle commonly used tools into a single package, making development faster and more organized. So in a very simple language, I would explain in such a way. Now imagine you are building a database assistant and you are instead of you creating individual tools like read data, insert data, update data, delete data, schema information, you could group all these selected tools together, and that's what exactly a toolkit is. A toolkit is simply a collection of related tools, and like you can think of it like a toolbox. A mechanic that doesn't carry one screwdriver, he carries an entire toolbox containing of different tools for different tasks. So for similarly, you can see here the examples. An SQL toolkit may contain multiple SQL related queries, and a Gmail toolkit contains email related tools. A file toolkit may have a file management tool. So toolkits make large application much easier to organize and manage. So we can create a toolkit, like we can create some basic tools we can create. So let's take a demo on this. Okay, so now starting the first, we will create a basic tool function where we will explain, like I will explain how to create a basic tool. So this function will be very easy, I think. So like it will be just a mathematical function where I will be multiply two numbers. But I will make sure that after this, the upcoming video, I will be creating an advanced bot using all the things that we have learned from scratch, like chains, LLMs, prompts, everything we will incorporate, and we will create an entire project kind of use case. So in this video, I will try to create some basic snippets and explain you how does the tools work, how we can play with this. So let's start now. So let's first, if you are new to this channel, or maybe you are watching first time, I have created a .env file where I have kept the API key. I have a .env example where I mentioned the API key variable. Then I have a requirements.txt where I have mentioned all the requirements that you need. So once you will write the entire code, if you want to run, you can first do pip install -r requirements.txt, and then you can run the final the code. So I will teach you how to do that. First, let's create a code for this. So if I want to create a tool, I want to use a code tool function of LangChain Core tool function. So I will be importing from LangChain underscore core dot tools import tool, then add tool def multiply, and I will be assigning a variable as a as int and b as a, and I will be assigning lionfish. And here I would be mentioning a doc string as, let's say, multiply two numbers, and then I mention as return a multiplied by b. And then the results what you are getting, I will make the variable as result and multiply dot info. A is 12 and D, let's take it as 8. Okay. So once you are done with this, then I have to print the result by doing print result. So we are done with a very, very easy code. Let's test. So first, if you are new to this code, we have to do pip install -r requirements dot txt, and this will install all the requirements based on what you have mentioned in the requirements.txt. I have already run it before, so it will show me requirements already satisfied. But now if I want to run the code, I will just mention python tool underscore create not py. And once I do, I will be getting a multiplied answer. So very simple explanation to this code. I have imported the tools from LangChain Core. I have mentioned a function where I am multiplying. I have created variables a and b, and I have just mentioned the doc string because if you want to see maybe in future you can understand what's happening in the code, and you're returning a multiplied by b, and then whatever result you are getting, you are scoring it as a result variable, and you are invoking the multiply function, and then you are printing the result. Very simple poem. So now we can move on to the next concept. So now the next concept is tool binding. So tool binding in very simple language is a process of attaching one or more tools to a language model so that the model becomes aware of the action it is allowed to perform. So once the tools are bound, the LLM can intelligently decide when a tool should be used based on the user's request. So in a very, very simple language, I want to explain that creating tools isn't enough. The model also should need to know that these tools exist. And this process is called exactly a tool binding. So doing tool binding, we attach one or two tools to an LLM. And for example, if I want to, if I'm creating a set of different tools. I have created set of different tools. I have assigned different tools in a bind tools function. So my model, now the model knows that it has access to both the tools without binding. And the model cannot use them. So think of tool as giving an LLM a toolbox before asking it to solve a problem. So here in a very simple thing, you can see the flow, create a tool, bind it to LLM, and then when the user asks the query, the model chooses the tool. And why tool binding is important? Because it makes the tool available to the model. It enables an automatic tool selection. It forms the foundation of AI agents. So this is what tool binding is all about. And now we can take a demo on tool binding as well. So I am creating a new file called as toolbinding.py. Okay. So here now what I am doing, I have to import uh some this packages. So I will take some which is already existing. So let's take this. So I need a .env. I need a LangChain chat models where I'm using init chat model. Then I am using a LangChain. So this I don't need. So I will just take tools, import to. Okay. So now I'm loading the .env, and I have also mentioned that I'm using GPT 4.0 4.1 mini, and also I'm using a model provider as OpenAI. Now what I have to do, I have to create a tool decorator, and I am creating a function def multiplier. Okay. So here I have mentioned the same as A as int and T as int, and assigning it to integer. And now what I have to do, I am again going to create where my return as A multiplied by V. Okay. So till here we did last video, last part as well. So now what I'm doing, I am creating LLM with tools variable where I am going to do LLM dot bind tools. And in this part, I am going to assign that you have a function which is multiply. You can add multiple as well. But for now, for this demo case, I am creating a single one where I am choosing as multiply. And now I am doing response here. And response I am calling LLM with tools dot invoke. And I'm mentioning as multiply 10 zip 4. Okay. And then I'm doing print print response. Fine. So now let's execute this. So Python toolbinding.p. Oh, dot string. Sorry, I missed dot string here. So I have to add a dot string, multiply two numbers. So here you can see, right, which tool has been called, which arguments has been passed, and is this multiply, then response data, then completion tokens. So this is where we are not getting any output, but we are able to see the entire flow, like what's the execution, what's happening, how which tool has been called, and the entire reasoning part has been done here. So this is what a simple understanding of tool binding means. And now comes the next important topic, which is tool calling. So tool calling is the process where the language model analyzes the user query and decides which tool should be used to answer the request. And the LLM determines which whether tool is required, selects the most appropriate one, and prepares the necessary input arguments. So, in a very simple language, now suppose the user asks, "What's the weather in Mumbai today?" So the LLM analyzes the request and decides I should use the weather API too. And this decision is called as tool calling. And notice that something important which the LLM only requests that tools should be used. It doesn't actually execute the tool, and it simply returns something like call weather tool with a city, which is Mumbai. So tool calling is the model deciding which tool to use and with what inputs. So let's take again a same demo which we can kind of implement. So we will create a new file. We will call it .py, and here we will first again you will create the we'll take basic requirements from here, and now we will create a decorator. You can take a decorator as well. Why we are creating everything scratch again and again. Okay. So till here we are doing the same as we have done before. And now we will do this. You can create a take the binding model as well. It also the same which we need here. Okay. So we have done the most of the part which we need here. So now what we are doing here, we will be doing just adding an additional step where we will be adding a response, where we mention LLM dot with underscore with tools, and will invoke, and we can take something like multiply and with 40. Okay. And now what we'll do, we will directly mention it as a सब print. सो यहाँ पे हम क्या करेंगे, यहाँ पे हम मेंशन करेंगे कि हमारा रिस्पॉन्स कर, जैसे कि मैं यहाँ पे लिखा हूँ अभी कि मेरा रिस्पॉन्स है रिस्पॉन्स, और मैं अभी कॉल करूँगा टूल कॉल्स फंक्शन. टूल कॉल्स फंक्शन क्या करेगा, एलएलएम के कॉल को टूल करेगा, जो मेरा बेसिक फंक्शन है उसको एग्जीक्यूट करेगी. मैं एक नया क्रिएट करता हूँ. और यहाँ पे ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे इसने बता दिया है कि ये जो हमें है इसको टॉल कॉल करना है मल्टीप्लाई फंक्शन को. सो और ये टाइप हमारा है टूल कॉल फंक्शन. ये है हमारा आर्ग्यूमेंट्स. सो यही है, इट डिसाइड्स एग्जैक्टली विच टूल एग्जैक्टली यू वांट टू कॉल. So this is also we have covered here. So very simple, we are just use the same binding tools function, and then finally we are calling a tools call function. Nothing else, same as the binding template. और अब आते हैं हमारे लास्ट पार्ट है जो है एग्जीक्यूशन. सो एग्जीक्यूशन इज वेयर यू विल गेट द आउटपुट. सो अभी तक हमने बस डील किया था कि हम कैसे टूल को क्रिएट करते हैं, कैसे हम क्रिएट करते हैं डिफरेंट फंक्शंस को, हाउ वी आर एग्जीक्यूटिंग ईच फंक्शन, and now how we are getting that which tool has been used. But here exactly we will show that how we are going to execute the entire tool workflow. So now coming on to the last part, which is tool execution. So here we'll decide like what happens after entire tool. Once a tool is decided, once I get to know that this is a function which I want to use. So the last step which is executed is where the tool is finally gets the output. So let's understand in a very simple language. So once the tool call is generated, our application runs that tool, and for example, the weather API is called, result is fetched, and then that output is sent back to LLM. And finally, the LLM generates a response shown to the user. And this entire flow is called as tool execution flow. So after the result is produced, the tool is again sent back to the LLM, and this helps us to get the final response. The execution flow will be a user request, tool selected, execution function, receive output, LLM generates a final response, and then once all the entire outputs are aligned together, we will get the final result in the form of the output. And now we'll understand this as well in a very simple and easy example. So I'll create a new file which is tool execution.py, and here I will create the same start as we have done before. We will be using the LangChain community, which has tools, and I will be importing. Let's use a real world tool here, which is a DuckDuckGo search run. And now here I will be creating a search where I will be using DuckDuckGo run, and I will import the function here, and result will be very simple. It will be search dot invoke, and I want the latest AI news. Okay, simple, nothing complex, very simple. And then print the result. Okay, so here we go. We have created the entire code, and now I am doing Python tool execution.py. Okay, so let's do it. What is asked? Pip install dvgs, and now again I do run. Okay, so if this actually is causing some issue with the maybe package or model, we can create another one. We'll create a different demo using a built-in tool, which is Wikipedia. So let's create such a way from LangChain community underscore tools dot tools, sorry, import Wikipedia query run from LangChain community dot utilities. I want to import Wikipedia the API wrapper, and now I am creating a variable mentioned as a wiki, and I will use call in the Wikipedia query run, and here I'll be doing API wrapper, Wikipedia API wrapper, and now finally I'm calling the doing the print function mentioned as wiki dot work. And let's take a simple query as a line check. So here we have to install pip install Wikipedia. Mm, mm. Wait some time. Okay. And now we can execute the code. Yeah. So here we go. We got the entire LangChain information. One is summary. Then we got about crew AI, vector retrieval. So we got the entire LangChain information which is available in the Wikipedia. So this is what a very simple tool calling I have done. I have just used a built-in tool where I have used LangChain community. I am using abilities to create a import a Wikipedia API wrapper. I am using Wikipedia run query to execute the code. And with the wrapper, I am mentioning that I want to get information of the line chain. And then on executing this, I am getting the entire information of a particular question which I am giving in the query. So very easy. So I think so you are very easy to understand what is tool, how does tool execution happens. Everything you may have got to know on a very high level. In the next video, I'm coming with a very detailed video explaining on completely what project I can, one project we can take as an advanced project, which I will coming up with all the information, what all the details that we have learned till date. So thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned, stay happy.